Jill, a college security guard with a troubled past, decides to break into a lab late at night. Her mission? To swipe some expired drugs. Once she secures the stash, she sells it to a shady guy named Greg. Despite her efforts, the payment leaves her disappointed. Unfazed, Jill heads to her mother-in-law Doris's house to pick up her kids, Matilda and Noah, who are no longer under her custody. As the kids prepare to leave with Jill, Noah seems reluctant, but Doris insists he should go. Before Jill leaves, Doris reminds her to return the kids later that day. As Jill drives away with Matilda and Noah, she attempts to make small talk about school. Matilda responds cheerfully, but Noah remains uninterested. Suddenly, Jill loses control of the car but miraculously avoids a crash, only to be struck by a sheriff's vehicle moments later. The collision is severe, sending Jill and her children plunging into a nearby lake. Panic ensues as they struggle to escape, but Jill manages to pull Noah to safety. Meanwhile, the sheriff heroically rescues Matilda. Once on solid ground, Matilda regains consciousness, and the sheriff explains that she had passed out. He also mentions that a citywide power outage has caused chaos with many vehicles losing power. He advises Jill to get the cut on her head stitched at the hospital. At the hospital, Jill is overwhelmed by the number of injured people. She tries to get medical attention for Matilda, but since the young girl insists she's fine, they're ignored. While attempting to tend to her own wound, Jill overhears a woman calling for help. Curious, she follows the voice into a room where she witnesses a miraculous sight: 2 patients have suddenly awakened. Shocked by the events, Jill takes her kids back to Doris's house, where her mother-in-law suggests they stay the night. During dinner, Jill asks Doris if she has enough medication at home. Doris assures her she does, but then asks Jill for cash to buy food. Jill, having lost her money in the car accident, promises to bring some after work the next day. That night, Jill struggles to sleep. Wandering into the living room, she finds old photos of her children and her late husband who served in the military. Soon after, Doris joins her, complaining of insomnia. Doris asks Jill for drugs to help her sleep, but Jill reveals she's no longer involved with drugs. Instead, she suggests meditation, but Doris dismisses it as ineffective. Jill checks on her kids before dawn, finding Matilda asleep but Noah wide awake. When she asks why he isn't sleeping, Noah simply says he can't. Early the next morning, Jill leaves for work. On the way, she runs into Greg, who is desperate for more drugs, even offering to pay double. Jill brushes him off and continues to the lab, where she intends to grab more expired drugs. However, she's interrupted by Dr. Murphy, a military doctor who arrives with soldiers. Murphy, who works at the college, is there to collect supplies from her office. As Jill sneaks around the lab, a soldier catches her in the act. She quickly explains that she's an ex-soldier now working as a security guard at the college. Just then, Dr. Murphy enters and recognizes Jill, but she's clearly disappointed when she realizes what Jill is up to. Jill tries to apologize, explaining that things aren't as they seem. It's revealed that Jill was discharged from the military due to her drug addiction, but Dr. Murphy had helped her get a job at the college regardless. Jill asks Murphy what's happening, and the doctor explains that they're setting up a research hub to investigate the city's mysterious power outage and the ensuing sleep deprivation that's affecting everyone. Murphy invites Jill to join them, but Jill declines. Before leaving, Murphy gives an address to a man named Brian, instructing him to bring her family to the hub. Brian suggests that Jill should reconsider joining the hub, warning that the world will soon descend into chaos if people continue to lose sleep. Jill dismisses his concerns, but Brian insists that it's true and mentions that there's one woman who can still sleep, a mystery that the hub is desperate to solve. Jill is skeptical, pointing out that her daughter Matilda had slept just fine. Realizing she might have revealed too much, Jill tries to backtrack, but Brian seizes on her words, suggesting that Matilda should be examined too. Panicked, Jill rushes home to check on her daughter, only to find Noah, who informs her that Doris took Matilda to church. At the church, a pastor is giving a sermon when Doris's friend informs him that Matilda is not sleeping. The pastor approaches Matilda, encouraging her to rest, but Matilda explains that she can only sleep when she's truly tired. The pastor then suggests they pray for her. Back at home, Jill and Noah prepare to rush to the church when Brian shows up, asking if Matilda is okay. Jill lies, claiming that Matilda isn't sleeping either, but Noah unwittingly reveals the truth that Matilda can indeed sleep. Realizing the danger her daughter is in, Jill decides to find Matilda before anyone else does. As they make their way through the city, they witness the first signs of chaos, people breaking into stores and the sheriff lying dead on the ground. Noah asks what's happening, and Jill explains that people are beginning to suffer from severe sleep deprivation. When they finally reach the church, they find the congregation praying over Matilda, hoping for a miracle. Jill demands to take her daughter, but the pastor argues that Matilda could be the key to solving their problem. A woman in the crowd insists that Jill has no right to take Matilda, as the children are legally under Doris's care. Brian tries to de-escalate the situation, suggesting they take Matilda to the hub, but the pastor objects, fearing that Matilda will be used as a lab rat. The tension escalates when Jim, the deputy sheriff, sides with the pastor and kills Brian. Chaos erupts, and Jill orders Noah to meet her in the forest while she goes to rescue Matilda. Jim threatens the pastor, demanding that Matilda be handed over, but Jill finds her daughter first and prepares to escape. Meanwhile, Noah, shaken by Brian's death, finds the hub's address in Brian's pocket. As gunshots ring out, Noah runs to the forest, where he reunites with Jill and Matilda. On their way out of the area, Noah suggests taking Matilda to the hub to find a cure, but Jill resists the idea. However, Noah argues that if everyone else dies, Matilda will be left alone in the world. Reluctantly, Jill agrees but insists on finding a car first. They head to Greg's garage, hoping to find a vehicle. Unfortunately, they walk into a robbery in progress. Men are stealing a car after shooting Greg, who is still barely alive. Jill hides while the robbers finish off Greg and steal the car. She notices one of the men wearing a sheriff's badge. After the robbers leave, Jill finds another car and returns to her kids. As they drive to the hub, Matilda falls asleep again, shocking both Jill and Noah. Their journey is interrupted when they come across a grisly accident scene. Jill discovers that the robbers from Greg's place have been killed in a gunfight. She takes the sheriff's badge and a gun from one of the bodies before returning to the car. Before leaving, Jill tells Noah that Murphy's soldiers likely killed the men. She also reveals Murphy's dark past as a military psychiatrist who used extreme methods, including sleep deprivation, to torture prisoners. Despite this, Noah insists on going to the hub. They soon pass by a library, and Jill decides they need a map. Taking Matilda with her, Jill instructs her daughter to learn survival skills from the books, should they fail to find a cure. She even tries to teach Matilda how to shoot a gun, but the young girl is too scared. Frustrated, Jill fires the gun in anger before noticing Noah inside the library. As they study the map, they realize they're not far from the hub. Just then, a group of escaped inmates ambushes them. One of the inmates, Dodge, steals their car with Matilda still asleep in the back. Jill and Noah rush outside, but it's too late. Dodge drives off, leaving them behind. Jill has no choice but to protect Noah from the remaining inmates. She fires her last bullet to scare them off, but they quickly realize she's out of ammo. Just as things look dire, Dodge returns with the car, telling them to hurry and get in. Jill and Noah are stunned, but Matilda assures them it's safe. Reluctantly, they get back into the car. Jill tries to keep Dodge in check by holding the gun on him, but he easily disarms her and takes the car keys after stopping for gas. While Jill teaches Matilda how to pump gas, Dodge finds some new clothes and changes into them. He then asks Noah why Jill is so on edge. Noah explains that Jill is preparing Matilda to survive on her own if they don't find a cure. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Dodge decides to stick with them. As they continue their journey, Jill starts teaching Matilda how to drive. Matilda complains about how difficult it is, but Jill insists she must learn, especially from books. Dodge, however, scoffs at the idea of learning from books, claiming they're just the opinions of others and that it's better to burn them all. Jill dismisses his cynicism, telling him to let Matilda focus. Their drive is soon interrupted by a group of savages who attempt to attack them. Jill takes control of the car, narrowly escaping the violent mob. Finally, they reach the outskirts of the hub. Jill tells Dodge to continue on his own, not wanting him to know what they're up to. After he leaves, Jill explains to her kids that she wants to scout the hub first to see if it's safe. She instructs them to stay hidden, with enough supplies to last a while in case she doesn't return. Jill sneaks past the soldiers guarding the hub and disguises herself as a doctor by stealing a lab coat. Inside, she asks where the woman who can still sleep is being examined. When she reaches the room, the security guard questions her presence, but Jill pretends she's there to take blood samples. However, when she meets the woman, Jill reveals her true intentions. She's there to rescue her and asks the woman to take care of Matilda after everyone else is gone. The woman, though, finds Jill's offer absurd and reveals that she doesn't know why she's able to sleep, especially since she was supposed to have died months ago. As Jill tries to process this, Dr. Murphy appears. Jill quickly lies, saying she's there to help and got the hub's address from Brian. Murphy asks about Brian and Jill's family, but Jill claims she hasn't heard from them. She also inquires about the progress of the research, but Murphy admits it seems hopeless, they might all have to die. Murphy welcomes Jill to the team, urging her to prepare for the next experiment. Shaken by the grim reality, Jill steps outside and breaks down, realizing she might lose her children. At that moment, she sees Dodge driving up to the hub with Matilda and Noah. The soldiers stop them, and Matilda tells them she can sleep, leading to her being taken inside to meet Murphy and another doctor, Katz. The doctors explain to Matilda that she could hold the key to helping others sleep, but first, they need to compare her brain activity with that of an animal. After putting Matilda to sleep, Murphy confronts Jill, expressing her disappointment that Jill kept Matilda's ability a secret. Jill pleads for her daughter's safety, but Murphy insists that everyone's survival depends on Matilda. She suggests that the sleep deprivation was likely caused by a solar flare disrupting people's internal clocks. Murphy continues with the tests on Matilda, who witnesses the other test subject die during the process. The doctors attempt to revive the subject with a defibrillator, but it fails. Murphy then suggests using Noah as the next comparison subject. Meanwhile, Jill begins to hallucinate, seeing Noah accusing her of not being there for her kids. She snaps out of it just as Murphy and the soldiers arrive to take Noah away. Despite Jill's desperate pleas, they ignore her. Elsewhere, one of the soldiers starts hallucinating, believing they're under attack. He begins a violent rampage, killing his fellow soldiers and causing chaos. One soldier attempts to kill Jill but ends up taking her own life instead. In the midst of the mayhem, Jill searches for Matilda, eventually finding her in the lab. There, Katz argues with Murphy, insisting that sacrificing Matilda is senseless. When Murphy refuses to relent, Katz kills her. Meanwhile, a soldier is about to kill Noah when Dodge intervenes, trying to convince the soldier that he's just hallucinating. Despite his efforts, the soldier kills Dodge, but Noah manages to escape. Matilda and Jill then search for Noah, finding him moments before he electrocutes himself with a live wire. Matilda rushes to grab a defibrillator, hoping to save him. However, the defibrillator's charge is too powerful, shocking both Matilda and Jill. The next morning, Jill, exhausted and barely conscious, clings to Noah, who remains unresponsive. But to their surprise, Noah suddenly wakes up, claiming he was dreaming. As they try to make sense of what happened, Jill struggles to stay awake. Just then, a U.S. Coast Guard officer arrives with a gun. Jill shields her kids, pleading with the officer not to harm them. Moved by her desperation, the officer lowers his weapon. As they prepare to leave the hub, Matilda notices the sheriff's badge Jill had taken earlier. A sudden realization strikes her as she recalls the defibrillator and Noah's recovery. She rushes to tell Noah that the cure for sleep deprivation might be short-term cardiac arrest. Matilda explains that Noah had technically died the previous night, but the defibrillator brought him back. She also recalls that when she drowned in the lake, she too had died until the sheriff revived her. Determined to test their theory, the kids decide to revive Jill using the same method. They drag her into a nearby lake, pushing her underwater until she drowns. Moments later, they pull her out and repeatedly try to revive her by hitting her chest. Finally, they hear her gasp for air. Jill is alive. Did you enjoy the recap? Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell to be updated next time we drop. Thanks for watching.